Lots of football clubs adopt different strategies in the transfer market. Some look to sign experienced players who are tried and tested in their league. Others focus on youth, hoping to develop players and increase their sell-on value. And some are fortunate enough to be able to concentrate their efforts on established superstars, either in or entering their prime. There is even this one club that just tries to sign everyone. All have their merits for certain clubs and in certain circumstances. One football club, Olympique de Marseille, have adopted a somewhat unique strategy in recent years though. The league and giants seem to have focused their attention solely on signing the absolute dregs of society and some of the most reprehensible scumbags within the sport.
And so for Hell FC, the worst people in history, it's Idi Amin in goal. Left back is Hitler, right back is Joseph Stalin, Saddam Hussein and Judas in the middle with Robert Mugabe sitting in defensive midfield. On the wings are Joseph Kony and Pol Pot. In attacking midfield, it is Gary Glitter and the strike partnership of Jimmy Savile and Joseph Fritzl.
This might seem like a joke, and it started out as one online, but at this point, it has become such a bizarre pattern that some people can't help but suspect that it may actually be deliberate. The most high profile of Marseille's repertoire of reprobates is of course Mason Greenwood. Signed from Manchester United for €31.6 million in the summer just gone, Greenwood was accused of assault by his girlfriend in January 2022, who shared videos and images of her injuries, along with audio of her telling a man that she called Mason that she didn't want to have sex with him, and the man that she called Mason replying that he didn't care what she wanted and that he was going to do it anyway, before issuing her with a threat. Greenwood was suspended by Manchester United on the same day, and 2 days later, he was arrested on suspicion of sexual assault and threats to kill. In October 2022, Greenwood was charged with attempted rape, assault occasioning actual bodily harm, and engaging in controlling and coercive behaviour, relating to 3 separate alleged incidents which took place over a period of almost 3 years. In February 2023, the Crown Prosecution Service dropped all charges against Greenwood, citing the withdrawal of key witnesses and new material that came to light. Amine Harit, who joined Marseille on a permanent basis from Schalke in 2023, following 2 seasons on loan at the club, killed someone in a car accident in 2018. Following a breakout season at Schalke and representing Morocco at the 2018 World Cup, just 4 days after Morocco's World Cup exit, French-born Harit was driving in Marrakesh with his 14-year-old brother in the passenger seat. Driving at between 10 to 15 kilometers an hour above the speed limit, a little after midnight, according to reports, Harit hit a pedestrian, a 30-year-old man, who died shortly afterwards. Harit was back in training with Schalke less than 3 weeks after the crash. He was later handed a 4-month suspended sentence in Morocco, meaning that he would serve no prison time, and fined 8,600 dirhams, equivalent to about €780. Harit also reportedly paid an out-of-court cash settlement to the victim's family and has since continued to represent Morocco. Elye Wahi, who also joined Marseille this summer for a potential €30 million from Lens, was expelled from the Collège Jean Moulin, a secondary school partnered with Cannes Academy, which Wahi was in at the time, in 2018, age 15, reportedly for ordering 3 of his classmates to follow into the toilets and undress in front of him under the verbal threat of physical violence. French investigative reporter Romain Molina later alleged that Wahi had also pressured the students to perform sexual acts in front of him. According to Molina, Cannes expelled Wahi from their academy and released him as a result. In October 2021, then aged 18, a 22-year-old woman alleged that Wahi had punched her in the nose outside of a nightclub just outside of Montpellier while Wahi was playing for Montpellier. The woman received treatment from the emergency services for her injuries, but Wahi's representatives denied the allegations, and the case against him was eventually closed without any further action. That adds up to 3/4 of Marseille's front 4 this season, 75% of their attacking quartet, who have either been convicted or credibly accused of killing someone, assaulting women, and/or sexual abuse. Presumably, Luis Enrique, the other member of Marseille's front 4, must either have some serious skeletons lying in his closet, or Marseille signed him from Botafogo in 2020 by accident. They're not the only three controversial characters in the Marseille dressing room either. Though nothing like the other three, Neal Maupay was at the centre of various controversies during his time in the Premier League because of things that he did at Brighton and Brentford, and just because of how bad he was at Everton. Adrien Rabiot's career has been a tale of non-stop scandals, from refusing to be on France's standby list at the 2018 World Cup, to bust-ups with managers and refusing to turn up, to training sessions and pre-season tours, and Paul Lirola and Leonardo Ballaredi, two of Marseille's young defenders, were found guilty of violating COVID-19 health regulations and demonstrating serious disobedience towards officers by Spanish authorities after hosting an illegal party attended by more than 30 people while Spain was still under lockdown and barricading themselves inside when the police turned up. Oh, and as if all of that wasn't quite enough, Chancellor Mbemba, one of the most experienced members of the Marseille squad, was suspended last month after an incident in training, accused of poor behaviour towards a member of the club's management, and banned from both training alongside his teammates and representing the club. Not content with all of that, of course, according to a report by L'Équipe, Marseille's sporting director Mehdi Benatia wanted to bring Benjamin Mendy back to the club in the January transfer window. Mendy was suspended by Manchester City in August 2021 when he was charged with 4 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault by 3 different alleged victims. More charges were later brought against Mendy when more complaints came forward, and in August 2022, he went on trial, charged with 8 rapes, an attempted rape, and sexual assault. Mendy pleaded not guilty to all charges, and over 2 separate trials, after the jury failed to reach a verdict on all of the charges at the first trial, Mendy was found not guilty and released. Although a jury didn't find Mendy guilty of the charges against him beyond a reasonable doubt, and footballers like Jack Grealish, Paul Pogba, and Vinicius Jr. jumped to his support, at the trial itself, it was heard that multiple women independently accused Mendy of sexual abuse over a long period of time before his arrest and before the case became public, that Mendy hired men to seek out drunk young women and bring them back to his house, where he allegedly took their mobile phones from them, and that he had unprotected sexual encounters with hundreds of women, including some who were reportedly at least as young as 17. The court also heard that Mendy claimed to have slept with 10,000 women, a rate of 1 a day, for over 27 years. At the time, Mendy was 28. In July 2023, Mendy signed a 2-year contract with Ligue 1 side Lorient. Club owner Loic Ferry refused to comment when asked about the signing, which, is perfectly normal. Why would an owner want to comment on the totally innocent stand-up guy that he had just signed for his club? In the words of the wall art in Mendy's cinema room, where he allegedly had sex with many women, shh. Mendy wasn't even good for Lorient last season. He registered just 15 appearances and struggled in many of them, as Lorient finished second from bottom and were relegated to Ligue 2. It was a reputationally costly signing for Lorient, which upset and angered many of their own supporters, without them getting almost anything positive in return. But, seemingly, it will take more than that to put Marseille off signing someone who has been accused of heinous crimes. I mean, who's next through the door at the Stade Velodrome? P. Diddy? Ghislaine Maxwell? Felician Kabuga? He was the chief financier of Hutu extremism during the 1990s, who imported 500,000 machetes into Rwanda, facilitating the Rwandan genocide. But, more importantly, could he do a job at left-back? I mean, he's 91 years old, and it was recently ruled that he was unfit to stand trial in The Hague for crimes against humanity because of his dementia, but why let something minor like that get in the way of signing a certified mega bastard? Evil first, football second. That is the motto at Olympique de Marseille. Not really. It is droit au but, which is French for straight to the goal, and appears on the club's badge, but I hope you'll agree that, at this moment in time, the former would be far more fitting. The history of Marseille, in many ways, is a history of scandal. The only French club to have ever been crowned as European champions, even that triumph was mired in controversy. 6 days before Marseille beat AC Milan 1-0 at the Olympia Stadion in Munich in the Champions League final, they travelled to Valenciennes for their third from last game of the Ligue 1 season. Having been losing European Cup finalists in 1991, where they lost on penalties against Red Star Belgrade, Marseille president Bernard Tapie was desperate to avoid a repeat fall at the final hurdle. The Valenciennes game was Marseille's last before the Champions League final, so Tapie wanted to keep his players fresh and free from any injury or fitness concerns. Marseille couldn't afford to rest their star players though, as they were still involved in a fierce battle for the Ligue 1 title, so Tapie came up with an elegant solution. He, and Marseille's general manager Jean-Pierre Bernes, contacted 3 Valenciennes players, Jorge Burruchaga, Jacques Glassman, and Christophe Robert, through Marseille player Jean-Jacques Edele, offering them a bribe to underperform in their game against Marseille. Burruchaga and Robert, both of whom had played alongside Edele at Nantes, accepted the bribe, but Glassman declined, and blew the whistle on Marseille's corruption. Marseille won that game 1-0, the same scoreline by which they won the Champions League final just days later, finishing top of the Ligue 1 table, but they were stripped of the 1992-93 title because of the match-fixing scandal, and in 1994, because of both match-fixing and other financial irregularities, Marseille were forcibly relegated to Ligue 2. Tapie and Edele were both convicted and sent to jail. Meanwhile, Bernes, Marseille's general manager, Burruchaga and Robert all received suspended sentences. More recently, in 2011, when Marseille's 30-year-old Brazilian striker Brandão was arrested on suspicion of the rape of a 23-year-old woman, his teammates responded with a very public display of support. When Loic Remy opened the scoring for Marseille in a game against Rennes following Brandão's arrest, teammates Andre Ayew and Stéphane Mbia ran over to the away fans in the ground and held aloft a Marseille shirt with Brandão's name on the back of it. Later on in the game, when the camera panned to the Marseille bench, Marseille's substitutes waved the same shirt in front of the camera. After the game, Marseille manager Didier Deschamps, who has managed France's national team since 2012, stated, quote, "Yes, I was aware of it, but I didn't forbid it. It was meant well. Brandão is one of ours. It was just a nod to him. Don't read too much into the idea." End quote. After critics pointed out that the optics of a massive football club performing an extravagant display of support for an accused rapist might be somewhat morally dubious, club president Jean-Claude Dacier called it a mistake that should never have happened, but stopped short of issuing a formal apology. Likewise, when 4 French internationals were investigated for their roles as clients in a prostitution ring operated inside of a Paris nightclub, including underage prostitutes, most notably 16-year-old Zahia Dahir, 2 of the 4 players, Franck Ribéry and Hatem Ben Arfa, were either current or former Marseille players. Those scandals felt different to the current one though, either being of a sporting nature or only tangentially linked to Marseille and not unique to them. This time around, Marseille's recruitment feels, if not deliberately provocative, then at least totally unmoved by the obvious provocation that it was always destined to cause. If we assume, for now, that Marseille aren't deliberately signing terrible people, but also that there are too many of them for it to be attributable to mere coincidence alone, from a sheer business and sporting perspective, one advantage of taboo players, like Greenwood or Harit, is that they tend to be available for discounted fees and wages, because other clubs either outright won't or are very reluctant to touch them. Marseille, like several of their players, allegedly, don't care if people are reluctant to be touched. Mason Greenwood, for example, was very highly thought of at Manchester United, having scored 17 goals in all competitions during his breakout campaign as a 19-year-old, and after 18 months out of the game due to his legal troubles, he impressed last season on loan at Getafe. Aged 22, were it not for the allegations against Greenwood and the alleged evidence against him, which appeared to be among the most credible and compelling evidence of the crimes that he was accused of committing imaginable, 1. Manchester United probably wouldn't have any intention of selling him, and 2. If they did, they'd want a lot more than €30 million. Harit, likewise, joined Schalke from Nantes for a potential €10 million just after he had turned 20, enjoying an excellent debut campaign in the Bundesliga, which earned him a spot in the Morocco squad at the 2018 World Cup. Were it not for his fatal traffic accident in Marrakesh, lockdown rule breaking, and continued allegations of attitude problems, his talent and potential as a 25-year-old, in isolation, would likely have commanded a far greater fee than the €5 million that Marseille paid for him. Even someone like Neal Maupay, who Brentford were rumoured to have a £15 million option to sign, written into his loan agreement last season, whereas Marseille have taken him on loan with the obligation to sign him for just £6 million, rising to £10 million subject to add-ons, and Adrien Rabiot, who looks set to join Manchester United from Juventus for £15 million in the summer of 2022, when Erik ten Hag first arrived at Old Trafford, but has just joined Marseille on a free transfer, are examples of Marseille signing so-called damaged goods for reduced price tags. If you just look to the players that Marseille have signed and the price tags, free from any considerations of their character or past indiscretions, it would be hard to make the case against them, having done some very good business. In addition to Rabiot, Wahi and Greenwood, OM have added the likes of Geronimo Rulli, Jonathan Rowe, and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg to their ranks this summer, following a window in which they lost several key players, such as Iliman Ndiaye, Matteo Guendouzi, and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, the last of whom scored 30 goals for Marseille last season. In a summer of drastic change in Ligue 1 as a whole, Marseille viewed this as the perfect season to go and push the boat out and target a much-anticipated title challenge. Marseille haven't won a league title since 2010, a year before the Qatari state acquired PSG, nor have they come close to winning it in the 12 to 13 years since then. Last season was a particularly miserable campaign for Marseille, who finished all the way down in 8th, but unburdened by the commitment of European football this season, and buoyed by PSG's loss of their all-time leading goalscorer, Kylian Mbappe, Marseille's hierarchy could smell blood. There is also a huge amount resting on this season for three key figures at Marseille: owner Frank McCourt, club president Pablo Longoria, and manager Roberto De Zerbi, which perhaps somewhat explains their laissez-faire attitude towards any ethical quandaries. McCourt, an American real estate tycoon, bought Marseille in 2016, and to describe his stewardship of the club up to this point as divisive would be something of an understatement. From a family of real estate and construction magnates in Boston, McCourt founded the McCourt Company, now McCourt Global, in 1977, before moving his family and the business from Boston to Los Angeles in 2004. McCourt sold his $16 million Boston home to John W. Henry, who has owned Liverpool since 2010, and back in 2002, Henry had also beat McCourt to the purchase of the Boston Red Sox. Following his failed takeover of the Red Sox, when McCourt moved to LA in 2004, he completed the purchase of the LA Dodgers and the iconic Dodger Stadium from the wretched piece of human filth that is Rupert Murdoch for $430 million. Financed mostly through debt. McCourt's ownership of the Dodgers was extremely turbulent. McCourt increased ticket prices almost every season that he owned the team. The team's charitable foundation, the Dodgers Dream Foundation, was investigated under McCourt's ownership when it was discovered that $400,000 a year, almost a quarter, of the foundation's entire budget, was being paid to the charity's chief executive, Howard Sunkin, who was also a close associate of McCourt's, leading to the money paid to Sunkin having to be repaid. And McCourt's wife, Jamie McCourt, was appointed firstly as the Dodgers vice chairman, then president, and finally CEO. Jamie McCourt failed to divorce Frank McCourt days after she was sacked as the Dodgers CEO in 2009, although allegedly those two events were unrelated, but a period of even more intense chaos for the Dodgers ensued as a result. In October 2011, 2 years after divorce proceedings first began, Frank McCourt paid Jamie McCourt $130 million to relinquish her stake in the Dodgers as part of what has been described as the most expensive divorce in California history. Major League Baseball later seized control of the Dodgers, owing to their executive disputes, before the team filed a Chapter 11 bankruptcy claim. Frank McCourt eventually sold the Dodgers, and much of the stadium surrounding land, for $2.15 billion, so Jamie McCourt took him back to court, McCourt by name, McCourt by nature I suppose, claiming that Frank had deliberately undervalued the Dodgers during their divorce proceedings, defrauding her of over $900 million, but she lost the dispute. Frank McCourt now has an estimated $1.4 billion net worth, but it cost him just a tiny sliver of that, a reported €45 million, to return to sports team ownership after 4 years and acquire Marseille in August 2016. Marseille were owned by the Russian-born Swiss billionaire Margarita Louis-Dreyfus, who was estimated to be worth almost $10 billion at the time, and had inherited the club following the death of her French husband, Robert Louis-Dreyfus, in 2009. American owners are about as trusted in French football as Elye Wahi is in a school toilets, allegedly, so McCourt was always going to be up against it when it came to getting Marseille fans on side. He promised to invest €200 million in Marseille, over 4 times as much as he paid to buy the club, and he appointed Jacques-Henri Hérault, the former communications director for Disneyland Paris, as Marseille's new club president. Hérault resigned during Marseille's February 2021 crisis, which was the last time that I made a video about them, when their own fans stormed the training ground, smashing windows and stealing Andre Villas-Boas' briefcase, following a run of 4 games without a win and 3 straight defeats. Both Villas-Boas and, later on, Hérault would become casualties of the unrest, which McCourt compared to the January 6th riots in the United States. McCourt issued a statement denying rumours that he was looking to sell the club, appointing Pablo Longoria, a Spanish executive with some experience working for unpopular regimes, following 7 months working as a sporting director under Peter Lim at Valencia, as Marseille's youngest ever club president, aged 34. Longoria's time at Marseille, and you may be starting to notice something of a theme emerging here, has been rife with scandal. He appointed Jorge Sampaoli as Andre Villas-Boas' successor, who lasted a little over 12 months, before being replaced by Igor Tudor, who was headhunted specifically by Longoria, but also lasted just a single season, pointing to tiredness with the club as his reason for leaving. And then came Marcelino, a former colleague of Longoria's at Valencia, who lasted just 3 months, in which Marseille only played 7 games before resigning, citing personal reasons and threats directed at the club's hierarchy by supporters, which led to Longoria waging a war of words with Marseille fans. There are, undoubtedly, some overzealous and badly behaved Marseille fans, but going to war with your own club's most vociferous supporters is a dangerous game. Some Marseille fan groups allege that Longoria had lined his own pockets with the club's resources. Basically, they called him corrupt, and Longoria responded by asking owner Frank McCourt to conduct an internal investigation to clear his name. Last season, Marseille had 3 different managers. Marcelino, who lasted just 7 games, Gennaro Gattuso, who lasted 24 games, and Jean-Louis Gasset, who managed Marseille, for their last 19 fixtures of the campaign. For all of their summer business, Marseille's most important arrival has probably been Roberto De Zerbi. Linked with the likes of Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool and Bayern Munich midway through last season, following the fine job that he had done at Brighton, De Zerbi seemed to take his eye off the ball a bit at the Amex, Brighton's results soon turned, and all of a sudden, his stocks seemed to have fallen. That opened the door for Marseille, who seized the opportunity without a second's hesitation, but make no mistake, De Zerbi's appointment, given their managerial turnover and 8th place finish last season, was still a real coup for Marseille. So much so that, when he was appointed, the Italian had to bat off questions about the Marseille job being a step down from Brighton. Nonetheless, this feels like a crucial juncture for De Zerbi. He's managed 8 different clubs in the last 10 years, lasting less than 2 years, at both Shakhtar Donetsk and Brighton. If he's a success at Marseille, a super club, of the kind that he was linked with when everything was going so well at Brighton, surely awaits. If he isn't, He may well become viewed as a journeyman head coach with a mixed record, and that opportunity may never present itself again. For all three of McCourt, Longoria and De Zerbi, therefore, a great deal is resting on the next couple of seasons being a success, and Marseille is a club, more so than almost anywhere else, that is just waiting to erupt if things go wrong. Already, there has been significant disquiet among certain segments of the Marseille fanbase, particularly surrounding Mason Greenwood's arrival, with the mayor of Marseille, Benoit Payan, among others, stating, quote, "I do not want my club to be covered in shame. It is not acceptable." End quote. It's not necessarily the majority of Marseille fans who are angered about the club's dubious recruitment, but there's certainly a sizable segment who feel that it flies in the face of Marseille's supposedly progressive and left-leaning values in one of the most multicultural cities in Europe, where the far-right National Rally only won 2.3% of the vote in the most recent municipal elections, and at a club which opened its doors to house the victims of domestic or sexual assault in 2020. At Mason Greenwood's unveiling in July, Marseille prevented journalists and reporters from asking any questions about off-field issues, which was the only reason that most of them were there. Roberto De Zerbi's biggest disagreement with Brighton, which led to him leaving the club, was reportedly regarding the profile of player targeted by Brighton's recruitment. Based upon what has followed, one could only speculate that Brighton simply weren't signing enough accused sex pests for De Zerbi's liking. I will retract that, just in case it's actionable, but the Italian has hardly covered himself in glory since arriving in the south of France. After Marseille signed Greenwood, De Zerbi stated, and I quote, "For sure, Mason's a world-class player. I don't know his background, no matter the player, once they sign here, they become like my children. I protect them, always." End quote. Which is the intellectual equivalent of sticking your fingers in your ears and going, "La la 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 la, I can't hear you, la 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 la." De Zerbi later stated that he believed Greenwood had, quote, "put an end to the controversy over his move to the club after he scored a brace against Brest on his debut. The controversy wasn't regarding his ability to score against Brest, Roberto, but his alleged inability to keep his hands off them when he hears the word no." It is a subtle difference, admittedly, and one that I can imagine is very difficult to understand. On the pitch, however, which is why they have so far avoided an outright meltdown, Marseille have made a fairly decent start. At the time of writing, OM had won 4 out of their first 5 games, putting them level on points with Monaco, only trailing PSG by 3 points, and with a game in hand. But by the time of this recording, they lost that game in hand, with Roberto De Zerbi being outsmarted by Liam Rossigna and falling to a 1-0 defeat away at Strasbourg. Marseille's summer recruitment and assortment of arseholes isn't just problematic because they are offering a platform to some truly repugnant characters. If it were in isolation, it would still look very odd and be deserving of scorn, but not necessarily all that consequential. The real crime here is that Marseille are an institution of French football, as France's biggest club, in terms of support, and the nation's only European champions. In laundering these types of players' reputations at such a big club, rather than at relative nobodies like Getafe, with no due respect, they both shame themselves and do the dirty work for other clubs to come in and sign those same players, arguing either that they have been successfully rehabilitated by Marseille, or, more likely, and more simply, that, well, if a club like Marseille saw nothing wrong with signing and playing them, then why should we? They can't be that bad, surely, if Marseille didn't see a problem with them. Can they? In this sense, Marseille aren't just one rogue actor, they are potentially an enormous reputation laundering machine, defecating publicly into the entire football ecosystem, poisoning the water supply for everyone else, and providing the cover for less explicitly evil but more cowardly clubs to make similarly shameful decisions further down the line. It's often said that there are no morals in football, and to some extent, that is probably true. But over a number of years, it felt as though some guardrails against the most extreme forms of depravity, accompanied by the most compelling evidence, had been imposed by the scrutiny of the media, sponsors, and most importantly of all, by supporters themselves. After Scottish striker David Goodwillie was convicted of rape, for example, Raith Rovers were so severely hounded after they signed him from lower league Clyde that he never played for the club and was eventually released, with Livingston United and Australian side Sorrento FC also U-turning on their decisions to either sign or try and sign Goodwillie following intense backlash. Meanwhile, Robinho, a man capped 100 times by Brazil, saw his return to Santos scuppered in 2020, where he was once considered a hero, after the club was surprised, for some reason, at the opposition to Robinho's signing after he had been convicted of raping a woman in a group sexual assault during his time in Milan. There is a sense, however, in which even that very minor progress that had been made in stigmatising the most extreme wrong-uns imaginable, especially those accused or convicted of crimes against women, has been eroded. It genuinely feels like if the Adam Johnson case happened now, and he was convicted of child grooming and sexual activity with a child, instead of becoming a universal pariah without a hope in hell of landing a deal with an English or most likely any European club, he would develop a bizarre little fan base of weirdos who love him because of the child sexual abuse rather than in spite of it. He would have hordes of defenders willing to go out to bat for him on social media, and Marseille would be waiting on standby to offer him a contract the second that he stepped out of HMP Moorland, with Roberto De Zerbi telling us all that he doesn't know anything about his past, but he seems like a lovely lad and he'll always defend his own players like his kids. There will be those, there always are, who say, "But Alfie, don't you believe in second chances?" The answer, broadly speaking, is yes. I don't believe everyone who does something terrible should be written off, locked up for the rest of their lives, and the key thrown to the bottom of the Mediterranean. That is different, however, to being paid an absolute fortune, living a life of unimaginable luxury, and being put on a pedestal as a celebrity in a position where you will be idolised and looked up to by huge numbers of people, especially children. Being allowed to be an elite-level sportsperson who is paid millions of pounds is not a fundamental human right. There is a significant difference, I think, between a company like Timpson in the United Kingdom, which offers many ex-convicts a route back into work, teaches them a trade and aids their rehabilitation, and Marseille, one of the biggest football clubs in Europe, offering multi-millionaires the opportunity to relaunch their careers while pretending they've never done anything wrong and forbidding anyone from asking any questions about it. But hey, that's just my opinion. I don't think that they are equivalent situations. I know that's a bit of a hot take. What's more, in order to be rehabilitated, surely the first step must involve taking some degree of responsibility. In most cases, in football, we are talking about people who have never accepted any wrongdoing whatsoever, have never publicly apologised or shown any remorse for what they have done or are alleged to have done, and who have had no meaningful punishment other than not playing for a while if they have been suspended while under investigation. Anyway, hopefully this video has eroded you of all faith in humanity and ensured that you are thoroughly miserable, at least for the week ahead. Please like and subscribe, let me know your thoughts. Anyway, that is the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, might be the wrong word. I hope you found it interesting or something and valuable in some way, shape or form. Hit the like button if that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And of course, it goes without saying, make sure that you are subscribed not just to this channel, HITC Sevens, but also my second channel, Alfie Potsama, both of which should be about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might enjoy more than this one, watching after this. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram and Threads by the username @HITC Sevens on all three, should you wish to do so. And all of those links, plus a whole lot more, should be down in the video description below. Cheers.